everybody. Hey, I'm super excited to join all of you today watching the recording of this video with John Warder. John and I got a chance to meet each other just recently, and we just immediately hit it off. We have some very similar personal experiences playing football, which we'll dig into today. But what I really want John to speak about today is his experience in helping people to leverage their talents and to identify strengths utilizing technological assessments. Many of you are familiar with some of the resources that he's going to talk about today, but some of you may be just awakened to this idea of the resources that are available to help you to really hone in on your unique abilities, hone in on your gifting and the talents, and how to really recognize the talents of the people on your team so that you can maximize the performance and really create a culture of peak performance. That's what we're all about. That's what we want to be able to help entrepreneurs and leaders to do. So whether you're a startup entrepreneur and you just want to learn about your talents so that you can delegate things off to other people and really focus on your strengths. And then if you're a business owner that's got a big staff or a senior leader and you've got a big staff of people and you're trying to figure out how do I get everything I can out of everything I've got to really maximize our potential and to build an incredible business and grow profits, grow sales, grow revenue. So John is president of his own organization, and he's been doing leadership training for decades now. He has gotten a level of expertise from many experiences working with top level leaders. This is year 16, right, John?
16 years ago, I started this particular one using the Clifton Strengths Assessment, yes.
Yeah.
But I've been coaching people, like you said, for decades.
Yeah.
Around leadership and career coaching, a lot of career coaching with people. It's just really been a love of my life to help people speak into them about their strengths. But with the Clifton Strengths, it's been 16 years that I started this.
Fantastic. Well, as Jim Rohn says, repetition is the mother of all skill. And so you have done lots of repetition with the Clifton Strengths Finders and working with leaders. I'm sure that, I've taken the assessment. It's good to get feedback, but it's also good to have somebody that can help you to execute on that feedback. So before we jump into top 10 talents and all the things that you're doing with helping leaders to expose and leverage their talents and their team's talents, let's talk a little bit about John Warder and a little bit of your background. You came out of the area of football, as I did, and you were a quarterback, so you understood strengths that you had and weaknesses that you had, and I'm sure you had strengths of your other teammates as you're the field general out there. Talk a little bit about how football has translated into helping you to coach leaders to grow their performance.
Oh, that's a good question. There's a book out there that said everything I learned about leadership, I learned from being in kindergarten. I could say the same thing. Everything I learned about leadership, I learned from playing football or playing quarterback, sports background. There's a lot of Navy SEALs and special ops people that are going into management training. And so I don't have that background, but I can fall back on my sports experience. That the whole idea of any sports team is to put the right people in the right position. So that's what management and leadership and building a business is about, is finding the right talent and taking advantage of that. That's an asset to capture and to, I call it finding the energy of each person on a team. Where does the energy want to naturally flow out of that person? And a lot of times, my story about playing quarterback at Iowa State, when I was in high school, I was the scoring champion in a suburb of Chicago as the quarterback. I was the quarterback for 1 year, my senior year, and I scored more touchdowns as a quarterback than any other running back and so forth in my conference. And so I was recruited as this running quarterback. But I fell behind. I was the number 2 guy for a couple of years who broke passing records at Iowa State. So there was a big emphasis on a passing offense. And so I got caught up in that kind of offense. So my junior year, not using my strength of running so much, I really ran a lot to save my life because we did not have a good team. So by my senior year, I was the first quarterback for head coach Johnny Majors when he first broke into head coaching. And he came in my senior year, and he said, he called me in his office. He said, John, you're not a throwing quarterback. And I said to myself, coach, you're right, but I think this is going to put me on the bench. Oh no. And he said, I need a runner. He said, and you are a runner. That is your strength. And he said, if you'll stay here all summer, we're going to teach you this triple option, and you're going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Now, who says that? I don't even know who Majors is, really. I don't know that he was Heisman Trophy runner-up. I just knew that he was the new coach, and we didn't get a memo or anything about who is this guy saying these things to me. It sounds so good. So he put in this triple option like we knew of the Oklahoma wishbone, only we did it out of an I formation with a trailing halfback kind of thing. And so I had probably my best experience at quarterback, but I felt that even by the 10th game, we played 10 games then, I was still really learning and growing in running that offense. But I had a great experience. I led the team in rushing, and which he said I would, and because you can option to carry the ball a lot. So anyway, it was a great experience. But he started 16 sophomores, David, and so we weren't going to be that good. But we did beat some teams. We were picked to go 0-10, and we won 3 of our first 5. And that was very exciting in that time. And anyway, 2 years later, those sophomores, now seniors, go to the first bowl game. And Majors really put Iowa State on the map back there in the early 70s.
Very cool. Well, you have obviously laid a great foundation and framework for many other successes after football. But you were followed by a guy by the name of Brock Purdy, and the NFL didn't recognize his talent until just recently. On draft day, they called him Mr. Irrelevant. Tell us a little bit more about where you think the NFL missed on Brock Purdy's talent, because at the whole time he had what he had. Why do you think that they missed out with all the tests and all the things that they do? They completely overlooked one of the most talented quarterbacks, or the most valuable player and most talented quarterback in the NFL last year. What do you think was the missing ingredient from those leaders that are wise decision makers in the NFL?
That is a great question, because even when he was recruited as a college athlete, Alabama didn't really, I think he got recruited there, but I think the coach said, we just don't think that highly of you. I don't know if he said it that way, but he wasn't that tall, wasn't that fast. But he led his high school team to the state championship, I think twice or whatever, with the new high school there. And anyway, he picks Iowa State, and he comes from out of nowhere. He was third team on his freshman year. And the first guy got hurt, and second guy didn't do as well. So they brought him in, and he led the team to a win, and he wins the rest of the games, kind of a thing, and has a great 4-year career starting at Iowa State. Well, he was wearing my number. So it came out, I did a post on Facebook. I said, hey, Brock was born in Phoenix. I was born in Phoenix. Brock is wearing my number 15. I wore number 15. And I said, Brock's marrying an Iowa farm girl. I married an Iowa farm girl.
That's
So there are
crazy.
all these comparisons. Well, some reporter from the Des Moines Register picked that up, and he called me the golden, meaning I'm old, the golden Brock Purdy, of the late 1960s. So that
That's
was,
cool.
yeah. And so
So
there was,
So you obviously had some fun with just watching him succeed, and you've had lots of opportunities to go work in organizations and area of leadership. But 16 years ago, you founded Top 10 Talents and started on this journey of really helping leaders to leverage their talents. Talk a little bit more about what led you to that and what's been transforming over the last 16 years.
so uh, part of my career has been, I was in ministry right out of college, working for that Athletes in Action organization with the Crew Ministry. And so I got to be a chaplain for the UCLA USC teams back then, early 70s. And I actually got to be a chaplain for the Rams, Dodgers, and Angels. I moved my family to the Midwest because we wanted to come back to the Midwest. My wife's from Iowa. I'm from Chicago area. So Minnesota teams wanted to have a chaplain, so I did that for a few years. And but I got into fundraising for Christian organizations for 20 years. I was like the executive director of fundraising and this kind of thing. Um, Worked for, and so the last organization I worked for was in 2008, 2002 to 2008. It was a micro lending organization that created small loans for mostly women in third world countries. We could give a woman in Africa $50 and she could leverage that to create a business around that money and pay the money back in 6 months. It's just an amazing economic concept in those poor countries, but to help them to help themselves, but to give them a little hand up. Anyway, in 2008, when the economy tanked, I told my leadership, I'm not going to raise the money that you want as far as the goal that we had set, because everything was going, and the way we were raising it, we were doing like habitat houses. I would go and find Christian guys and gals who were home builders and encourage them to work with our organization. And instead of the house going like to Habitat House to a family locally, the house would be sold retail like normal, and that pot of money, if you will, would from subs and suppliers donating something, and then the general contractor donating his profits, we could create a bunch of money to put into a poor country and create these loan system. Well, anyway, so that's when I said, I'm going to start my own business since I don't think I'm going to be able to raise the money you want. I've always wanted to start my own business, and that's when I decided to do that.
That's great. So you focus in on helping people to use their strengths and their talents and fully leverage them. And you've utilized the Clifton Strengths Finders. Why did you choose that particular assessment as the tool? And do you administer that? You allow people to purchase that through you, or do you send them off to another provider for that?
Well, those are good questions. So I was using other assessments at the time, but a friend of mine from college lived right next door to a woman out of Dallas who had created a one-off of the Clifton Strengths model. And what I call it is she put it into a color chart system that made it pop so much better. You could see insights from just looking at a color scheme of your strengths. And so my friend said, John, you have to know about this. He saw me on LinkedIn. I got on LinkedIn 2008. And so he saw me, said, hey, you got to know about this. Check it out. In fact, he was the director of training for the crew ministry. So that's how he knew me also. We were cohorts in that organization at one time. So I interviewed with that woman. She did my profile over a Zoom call. And I said, I want to take your training. So I call it putting StrengthsFinder on steroids because it makes it so much more applicable and gives insights that you just can't see by reading the good information that Gallup gives us. I even went and got certified to be a certified Gallup coach, but I'm also trained with this other model called Core Clarity. It's coreclarity.net. So I use both platforms. I can synergize the material and create. One of my strengths is top 5 talents is maximizer. So I'm always looking for ways to maximize or make something better. And so I like customizing the better for my clients with this model of Clifton Strengths.
Very cool. So when you look at the StrengthsFinder assessment and you identify the talents, what's the first thing that you do with the leader once you've identified what their talents or gifts are?
So the way they've done it the last 20 some years that they've been in operation is they've given you your top 5 talents out of 34 that are in the assessment. But now they've actually encouraged everyone to know their top 10 talents. So I think it's kind of funny because when I first started this in 2008, I got the website top10talents.com. So I knew back then when I talked to people who were taking this and I was trying to get started, people would say, well, I've taken this a couple of three times, and why is it that three of my talents stay the same and two change? Or why do two stay the same and three change? And as I thought about that, I said, I think that's just the next set of five talents coming into play. Have you changed your position? Are you doing something a little bit different that allows you to say, hey, I enjoy doing these. I prefer to do this kind of work now. I'm really enjoying my job. So that's what kind of comes up to the top of the pile of your assessment is what is it that you enjoy or what you prefer in your work experience. And so some of those things do change, but to say to focus on your top 15 would be good enough. In fact, if there's 34 talents in the profile, if you were to cut it in half, David, and just live your work life in the top half, you'd pretty much be a happy camper because those are the things that you prefer more. And the bottom half are those things that you prefer less. And it doesn't mean you can't do number 34. It just means the energy that it takes to do those things is higher. You get tired easier. You're just not as enthralled with those. But you can. I've got a manager and CFO that his number 34 is empathy. So every time I do a training with his team, his staff know that, and they all laugh at him. And of course, he thinks it's funny too. But what he does to the whole concept is that you focus on your top 5 or 10, and then you utilize everybody else's top 5 or 10 to enhance your ability to be a good leader. So he goes to somebody on his team that has empathy in their first 5. Typically, it's like an admin person or an HR person, and might go and say, hey, Mary, Bill, hey, can you tell me somebody on the team that's really hurting that I need to comfort a little bit, give them some encouragement? Oh, yeah. Hey, Jack's dog just died. He's not feeling too good about it. And hey, maybe you should go see and just say you're sorry to hear about that. And so there's how to utilize someone else's strength of empathy that he doesn't really have in his top 5 or 10. So that's how you kind of play the game. It's really using everybody else's talent to enhance the overall profitability of any team, but also for emotional support.
Yeah, and really being able to utilize everybody's unique ability where they're having it's not work-life balance as much as it is vocational well-being, is that they actually feel this sense of fulfillment because they're getting a chance to contribute and use something that they're uniquely gifted at or their strengths rather than pushing people to do a job. I love the phrase, that we need to career plan people, and that oftentimes is the nice way of saying fire them or terminate them, but it's really about getting them onto the track so that they can get the very best outcomes from what it is that they've been gifted to do. And there's nothing worse than to keep a person in a position that they consistently fail at because it's not their gifting. But I'm curious to know, how do you help a business leader to determine whether or not the person's just underperforming? I mean, if their strengths are identified or their talents are identified as being something that would be good at this particular position, have you ever seen people that struggle in positions even though there's talents and gifts there?
Right, that's a great question, and I think that's what I love doing is helping to helping the leadership tweak the talents of any underperforming person. Typically, if they're underperforming, it's usually not in their strength areas. I mean, probably the simplest way is say, I got into sales thinking that I could make a lot of money. Well, okay, but do you have an acumen for sales? Have you experienced good experience? You haven't had good experience in sales in the past. And so a lot of people go into sales just hoping that they could somehow, make a good income. But that's not the point of sales. Is you got to have the certain DNA, the ability to do that. And for some people, it comes so natural, and that's what you want to find in your life is what is it that comes so natural that you could create a business around it, that you could create a job from it. That's what Gallup is saying. The assessment that they created, Dr. Don Clifton created this. He said we wanted to find out what the best talents were for a person to be successful. And we couldn't find that. He said, what we found is that everybody's top 5 or 10 talents for themselves was what could make them successful. It's you leverage what's strongest about you. Now that just fits the sports model, right?
Mm.
And even in the military, when we talk about, the special ops people going into management, when you think of a sniper, a person who is so accurate that they get to be a sniper, that's like the top 1% of every guy and gal that learns how to shoot a gun. There's that extreme rare air of somebody that is so gifted. Where and there are those positions that takes a unique talent to pull it off and be successful in something even like that. But even in workaday life that we have talents and strengths that I believe, God has gifted us in this way. And part of my Christian worship for me and my philosophy of life is to play out what God has designed in and for his honor, for his glory. And so you see it in some of the athletes. I'm so proud of Brock Purdy. He gives glory to God on some of his interviews, and it's really cute to see him do that. That's what I was trying to do back then, even as a young Christian at Iowa State myself.
Well, when you see people that have become great leaders, but haven't necessarily had the strength of leadership. I mean, you could go back to, leaders of the past, or, people that are not necessarily the most gifted speakers, the people that are not most gifted communicators, oftentimes, rise up to a level of leadership, but that's not necessarily their gifting. So I guess my question is, what happens when your gifting and your strengths don't match your opportunities? What would you give for coaching or consulting advice?
If it's a leader, we would look at his or her strength areas and basically ask the question, so what is satisfying about your work experience at present? You are experiencing success at a certain level. Um, uh, and to see how we could tweak it to make it even better. There's a consultant out of Canada. He's called the strategic coach. I don't know if you've heard of
Yeah,
him,
Dan Sullivan.
Dan Sullivan.
Hmm.
So I like what he's created. He's created these different levels of seminars that you go to, and they bring in a lot of entrepreneurs who are wearing 10 different hats. They're startups, so forth. And the idea is as you go up the ladder of his conferences, you begin to wear, he tries to encourage you to wear less and less hats so that by the time you reach the top of his seminars, you're only wearing one hat, the hat of what you do really well, which creates less stress, which creates a whole dynamic of performance that you didn't have before because you were doing all these other things. So it's almost a time management concept too, of focusing on what's strongest about you and going and doing that.
Yeah.
So that would be because a lot of people are successful, but if you would say, but they've been successful at being mediocre.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love his diagram that he uses. He uses kind of a bullseye focus, and in the outer ring of the bullseye is things that you're incompetent at, and then the second ring in is the things that you're competent at, and then the third ring in is the things that you're excellent at,
Mm.
and then the middle ring, the bullseye, is the things that you're truly uniquely gifted, talented, or experienced, or successful at. And what he talks about is you start off with delegating the incompetence, and then the things of competence. The hardest things to delegate are oftentimes the things that we're excellent at. Um, and we actually are comfortable doing those. It's the things that we're uniquely gifted at that oftentimes are an area of discomfort, because, it's okay to do them, 1 hour a week, but to do them 10 hours a week or 40 hours a week, that is oftentimes an area of discomfort, and you have to give up control in the areas of excellence, competence, and incompetence, which I was always blown away by that concept, and I've tried to emulate that, but it is hard. It's hard to let go of those things that you're excellent at, and because again, there's things out there that you and I are gifted and talented, and we would be considered, they would be strengths for us, but we haven't learned to leverage them in the way that we could because we've been so busy with these other things that we have been receiving, maybe for reasons unknown. Maybe we want to be the hero. Maybe we want to be charitable and give back to others. So we're on 16 different committees or different things that are side projects that really aren't giving us the biggest bang for our time and buck. But anyways, I'm going to put you on the spot here, John. So get your coaching glasses on and just take a look at this report. And what would
This
you
is
say
yours.
about this person that is got these top 10 strengths over to the left, and then all of the remaining 24, which would be the total of 34 that you had mentioned earlier? This is my Clifton Strengths results from back in 5 years ago. Not sure if they've changed since then, but what would you say to a person that's got these strengths? Anything specific? I'm putting you on the spot here, but
No, that's fantastic. So I just diagrammed them out into what Gallup would call domains. There's 4 domains. That's what the 4 colors are in that little. What I love about this, it's just in the last few years that they've come out with showing, pulling apart your top 10 talents. So, I mean, it really fits the model that I've always had. And you also get to see all 34, and you get to see the bottom 5, let's say.
mhm.
Notice 31 is empathy down there.
Yeah, people are going to be starting making fun of me now.
So it
I
doesn't
better find
mean
somebody to be empathetic around me.
it doesn't mean you can't be empathetic and express empathy, but it's just not in your first 10. And that's what we want to see in every person is what is the strength of this person? It's in these top 10 or 15.
Mhm.
And what I see in your first 5, um, in the profile that I use that is really colorized, you in the way she's created, so Gallup has these 4 domains where they put all the talents. There's 8 and 9 and 8 and 9 talents
Mhm.
each in those domains. Well, the person I got trained in this core clarity model, she's reconfigured some of them so your talents fit in all 4 domains or all 4 quadrants, we call them. And what that as a personality is called, um, uh, um, a stabilizer, a
Mm.
stabilizer. And so you have, so notice you have focus. Focus is one of the um, strong giftings. And so because it's your number 1, I'd say that is an interesting talent that you have because that is such a powerful one of the 34. They
Mm.
actually call it a wild card in this core clarity model, maximizer, which I have as my number 1, and you have focus. That focus can be attached to any of the other talents you have there, like futuristic or achiever, and it becomes even more energetic in like espresso coffee.
Mm.
It's like double caffeination.
Mm. That's
So that
cool.
so that's an insight that you don't typically get from Gallup, but that's what I've gotten from this other model
Yeah.
is maximizer and focus, which we both have, we can use to enhance the energy. So a lot of people tell me, John, you are so excited and so energized. Well, it's just because I've got this kind of DNA going on for me that is my asset.
Yeah.
So I should go be John, go be this energized uh, um, person. In fact, you've got it too. I've got positivity in my top 5. So
Hmm.
people see me almost sometimes. I had a boss call me into his office when I first got involved in HR after I left the ministry, and he said, "John, why are you so excited about being in this ground level HR job?" And I said, "Well, it's just very exciting to me to have a new job like this. I want to learn what I can." And he said, "Everybody likes your energy. John, are you on any kind of drugs?"
Yeah, positivity is a drug, that's for sure. That's in
That's
today's
right.
world,
So
you could probably assume that people are taking some drugs to create that positivity because it doesn't come natural to them. It's not a natural gift or talent. They actually struggle with it, and so it takes guys like me and you to be the light and the salt and the salt and the light to make things brighter and better. And I'm excited to partner up with a person like you to keep encouraging folks. But let's wrap things up and land the plane here. And let's talk a little bit about your management philosophy that you talk about with clients.
right. So in the last few years, Gallup has written a book called It's the Manager. In their very first book that came out like in 1999, it was called First Break All the Rules. And they studied 80,000 managers. And what was the difference between, kind of that 80-20 thing that the top 10 or 20% of the best managers, I think Kmart, the Kmart big box stores, all the same products, the same size typically. Why were the best managers selling more products and services? Well, it had to do with how they treated their people. And the key concept that they came up with that differentiated all the managers from the mediocre managers was that the top performing managers individualized the job description of each employee. That is, they took advantage of those top 5 or 10 talents and even recreated their job description around their strengths rather than just giving them, a generic vanilla job description. They said, hey, what else do you like to do? Tell me some stories about when you had the best experience in your work experience, or tell me about this activator talent. And so that's really what I do. In fact, the first thing we could have a conversation about is say, Brian, where does, or David, where does this focus show up for you? What's satisfying about this focus talent for you? And we could go through the definition of that Gallup gives or this core clarity gives and have a discussion around just focus.
Mm.
If any manager would just take the first talent of all their reports and find out, ask questions about it. What's satisfying about this? And how can we take advantage of that even more?
Hmm.
If you had an assignment to do more focused, whatever that might mean, you would probably say, yeah, I'd love to be in on that.
Yeah,
I'd
we
love
have
to.
a phrase that we use in the coaching world that it's not a matter of hocus pocus and magic, it's a matter of focus. And I also heard the phrase focus precedes success. And when a person, another saying is a confused mind does nothing. And I think that it takes somebody with focus and oftentimes a coach to help a person like an entrepreneur, busy business owner with so many different ideas and goals and things to do and checklists and all the stuff that they have to do. It's like those mini hats. It takes sometimes an outsider to guide them to really ask good questions so that they can choose to focus. So talk a little bit about how you work with organization. Walk us through the process of what you would typically do with a business leader to help them to leverage their talents, because I know you offer a really valuable service at no complimentary to the people that reach out to you for it. And then how do you translate that into their organization or into their business?
So when I take on a client, I've interviewed them and maybe even assess the leader, gone through their strengths to kind of show them what they could see for themselves personally, and what we could do for the team. And typically, they go to Gallup and get the assessments done. They send the data to me. I put it into these color schemes, these color charts of this core clarity model, and then we actually have some team meetings. I usually start with a 4-hour session as a team, and we start talking about these, typically the top 5 first. And then I will typically come back a month or 2 later and review and add more content and do that maybe several times if I can get a contract like that. Sometimes because of budgets, I can't come in 3 months in a row, but I'd
Mm.
like to,
Yeah.
because the more that we can talk about strengths, by the time we hit the 3rd or 4th month of John coming in to review and add more content, people's light bulbs, you might say, are coming on, saying, "Oh man, this is good stuff. I just didn't quite understand it. I want to do this with my department." If we were doing a leadership team first. So it
Mhm.
really takes some people a little bit of time. Some people catch it right away, they apply it right away. And that's what I think I am. I'm the applications person of Clifton Strengths.
That's great. Yeah,
A
and
lot of, a lot of
we
teams,
oftentimes say that coaching is a process and, not an event. So coming in and having an event with an assessment and even just having a conversation, while it would be extremely valuable to someone, it is in the implementation of the executable strategies that you give to them or that they give to you. And they say, hey, this is what would really help me to leverage these talents. And then confirming that they've been taking action on implementing those because, um, you know, without action, there's a beginning of delusion. And you can have all the amazing thoughts of all the talents that you have up in your head or all the talents of your team, but if you're not implementing steps and strategies to execute on those, you are not going to see an outcome from the results or anything that we recommend. So, John, talk to them a little bit about how they can get in touch with you. Top10talents.com is your website. Is there any other resources that you need to share with them that would help them to leverage some of the resources and consulting that you offer?
you can find me on LinkedIn as well under my name, John Warder, and I'm there too. And um, yeah, top10talents.com, and just have people contact me there.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for sharing some of your talent with us, and we're excited to get a chance to hear more about some of the successes that you've had. Looking forward to partnering up with you, John, and helping the world to fully leverage their talents. So thanks so much for your time today.
Let's have more conversation on your talents too. That'd be great.
Awesome.